I'm sorry, this would have been her birthday, and she would have been 103. And she went to this church the whole time. She was baptized here. And when, as a small child, she told stories of her dad was on the choir. And on Sundays, if you look at the list over there of pastors, they'd have Pastor Thena, who was back in the 30s. They'd have him over for Sunday dinner, and they had made homemade ice cream the night before, and her dad and Pastor Thena polished it off. So I just wanted to say, one of the things that she always liked about her birthday, this day in history, the 19th, the swallows, excuse me, the swallows come back to Capistrano. And geez, I didn't think I was going to be this much of a mess. But she always said that proudly, and they only missed 1 year in her lifetime because the winds were too strong. So I don't know where the wind came from, maybe from her. But I just want to let you know, it just happened at March 19th, hit on a Sunday, and she liked this place. She would have liked all you people.
So happy birthday, Mary Elizabeth Hendricks.
She always made it a point that it was Mary Elizabeth, not just.
And that is Mary Elizabeth, not just Mary. Oh. Thanks, Keith. And we also have some exciting planning coming up. For those of you that don't know, Easter is not just a celebration of the return of spring and the resurrection. It is also Matsiko World Orphan Choir Sunday. What better way to celebrate new life in the world than with a group of some of the most beautiful, powerful young youth ambassadors who will be joining us from Liberia this year, that will be coming and singing as the primary part of our service. But also, we have a very special opportunity to be community for them and for each other, and Shauna's going to tell us about that.
So we are hoping to have an Easter feast here, Easter Sunday. The whole congregation's invited, of course. I know lots of people have other family plans, and that's okay too. But I was wondering, Betty Decker and I are going to be organizing this Easter feast. But I was wondering if there was anyone in the congregation who would be willing to tackle a West African dish. So I Googled it. They're out there, like rice and chicken wings and shrimp and stuff. So, I mean, we're planning on having ham and turkey and all the American things, but I thought it would be really nice, since we have a tribe of West African kids, to give them a special taste of home. So if you would see either Betty or I afterwards, after church, that'd be greatly appreciated. If you're willing to make a ham or a turkey or just a covered dish that day, that would be great too. Thank you.
I volunteer myself to pay someone else to make a delicious West African dish. I've got West African friends. I will get us the hookup, right? God's kingdom consists of many gifts and talents, and knowing one's spiritual gift is of deep importance. Grubhub is my spiritual gift. Any other announcements for the good of the order from our team and family in the house? All right, we got choir after church today, Dick. Yes. Woo! So one of the gifts that we will be sharing with Matsiko is that our choir is coming back to do a song for them for Easter as the welcoming portion and call to worship portion of our service. So if you are a choir member or if you would like to be, there's going to be a short rehearsal after church today, so just hang around after church, and then there'll be another one after church on Palm Sunday, so April 2nd. And so we'll just learn the song in those two sessions. You do not have to be a previous choir member. You do not have to be a choral expert. You have to be excited to help welcome Matsiko and make a joyful noise to the Lord. That is all you need to do. But our wonderful director of music will be here to accompany you through that. So just remember to stick around in the sanctuary after church today, unless you're on consistory, and then come to consistory. A couple of other quick announcements. Today is the final day for Easter flowers. Y'all remember this stunning sign-up sheet? If you would like Easter flowers, it is a beautiful display that is a wonderful part of our worship, makes an excellent backdrop for those Easter dresses and fabulous hats, but also becomes something that you can take home with you or share with members of our community. So this is very much the last day. Please make sure you get those orders in today. And then also, we will be joining St. John's again on Tuesday at 6 p.m. We had a wonderful session, and I don't just say that because I taught this past week, but we've been having a really wonderful time connecting with members from St. John Episcopal right across the parking lot and having delicious home-cooked soup and bread meals, and also engaging in some Lenten study. And we had some very cool members from St. John that actually came here for our paint day yesterday. Thank you so much to all the Heidelbergers that showed up yesterday. We had a blast doing painting your emotions as a spiritual practice as part of our Lenten extra activity here. We had a packed house, and several people made donations to Heidelberg specifically, in addition to paying, we asked for a donation for Liette. She donated her time, we donated the supplies, and she said, if there's anyone who would like to make an additional donation, please make it to Heidelberg for their mission and outreach. And folks did. So God bless the fact that there are still really beautiful people in this world. Don't forget that. Stay encouraged, my friends. Please remember to sign up for the community breakfast, March 25th. So coming up next Saturday. And we do have some opportunities if you are interested in supporting Matsiko as they are visiting for Easter weekend. We have folks who are signing up to be host families and drivers and help deliver meals and support them while they're here in school, because these are young people, right? So they are also given tutoring and education while they travel with this choir. That's a big part of why they are in this choir. They are ambassadors, and they are also students getting a chance at a much better life. So please see Peggy. Wave your arms, Peggy. Hey. So Peggy is our regional coordinator. If you are interested in helping contribute, volunteering, perhaps a ride, perhaps a meal, anything that could be of support, please see Peggy after church today or next week to find out what are some of the things that you might be able to do to support. And then also today is part of a national sharing movement called the One Great Hour of Sharing. And I love that some folks chose to share with us, but the One Great Hour of Sharing is a United Church of Christ, and you have a little envelope in your bulletin. The UCC nationally has a lot of large mission funds for our global outreach, specifically things that end hunger, that work to support children receiving opportunities for education and clean water. And so this is a one time a year that congregations across the country are asked, if you have a little extra, if you have just some change in your pocket, whatever it is, that you'd be willing to share, just remembering that we're part of a global community. We have the chance to join with our other UCC congregations, not just in York, but across the entire United States. Oh, other denominations do it too? See, that's why I love Mark, our conference liaison extraordinaire. So other denominations also participate in the Great Hour of Sharing. So this is really a chance for us to show the Christian community showing up. And that's what we do. So if you have something extra, it'd be great if you put that in your envelope and put that in these lovely brass bowls during offering, and we will be consolidating all of those and sending them to the 1 Hour of Sharing Fund together. All right. Last call, my friends. Okay, well, in that case, we will continue with our journey through the mystics and the season of Lent. And so I invite you to enter into prayer, worship, the joy of community, and a state of reflection as we listen to our centering music.
Not that loud. All right, here we go.
There we go. My friends, we declare ourselves to be a Christ-centered, open and affirming congregation, welcoming into full membership and participation in the body of Christ persons of every race, language, age, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity or gender expression, physical or mental ability, and economic or marital status. And remembering that we choose charity of heart and a spirit of community, I invite you to join us in a practice we've been doing during Lent, which is using something called taze chanting, which is a form of a simple, repeated tune or phrase that we say multiple times so that it can really become embedded in our hearts and something that we can return to throughout the week. So I invite you to sing this together as prayer so that we can remember to carry this with us. The love of Jesus and the unity of the Holy Spirit be with each and every one of you. As we enter into shared community, we remember the Spirit of God is upon us because God has anointed us. God has sent us to bring hope to the oppressed, to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and to release the prisoners. This is the confidence we have in approaching God, that if we ask anything according to their will, God receives us with grace. And if we know that God listens to us, whatever we need or ask, we know that we have it and need not live in fear or grief, but with peace in believing. And now, as we enter into this first weekend of spring, I invite you to stand up, stretch out, and sing from your diaphragm about the beautiful gardens that we know will be blooming soon. Throughout this Lenten season, I know that took you all back a little bit, didn't it? Throughout this Lenten season, we have been diving into the work of the mystics, writers and philosophers and spiritualists who had a particularly close relationship with God, who needed no intermediary and were able to just build a deeply personal relationship and actually experience God's voice. And so as we journey through Lent, we've thought about what does it mean to experience God in the world all around us. And so this week, as we learn more about French Jewish philosopher and writer Simone Weil, I invite you to join and say with me the affirmation of faith. Let us pray. Grant us, lover of us all, after the example of your holy servant, Simone Weil, to do what you would have us do, and always to desire what is pleasing in your sight, that cleansed by your love, enlightened by your truth, and kindled with the fire of your Spirit, we may follow in the footsteps of your beloved Simone Weil and make our way to you, O most wondrous of all.
Good morning. Excuse me. So I think it is fine to read scripture, but I always like to read it in context. And the interesting thing to me about this passage is where it's located in Matthew 13. Shortly before this parable, there is another parable which we all know, the parable of the sower. And it's interesting to me that in the parable of the sower, there is one sower of the seed, and depending upon where the seed lands, that tells you whether or not the seed will flourish or not. And so the inference is that it's one's environment that one is sown in that determines how one comes out. This parable is different. In this parable, the parable of the weeds, there are two sowers. There are the sowers of the good seed and the sowers of the bad seed. And they all grow up together, the good crop and the weeds. They grow up together until they are harvested, and then they are separated. So I just think it's interesting that those two parables are juxtaposed. So from Matthew 13, 36 through 43, Jesus explains the parable of the weeds. Then he left the crowds and went into the house, and his disciples approached him, saying, "Explain to us the parable of the weeds of the field." He answered, "The one who sows the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world, and the good seed are the children of the kingdom. The weeds are the children of the evil one, and the enemy who sowed them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the age, and the reapers are angels. Just as the weeds are collected and burned up with fire, so will it be at the end of the age. The Son of Man will send his angels, and they will collect out of his kingdom all causes of sin and all evildoers, and they will throw them into the furnace of fire, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Then the righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. Let everyone with ears listen." And the second reading, the short sentence from Corinthians, this is also from a very well-known passage. Love is patient, love is kind, etc. Read at a lot of weddings. So, from 1 Corinthians 13, verse 6, love, does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth. May these words speak life into your spirit.
So there is a slight change in our program that I am obviously not Minister Jocelyn Kears, but she graciously agreed to swap today because we have a very special guest speaker, and this was a day that they could be with us. So don't worry, Jocelyn still loves us. She just was willing to be flexible. But I want to lift up this passage because this passage sucks in a lot of ways, right? Now, maybe this is just me, but when I was raised in the church that I grew up in, there was a lot of the whole gnashing of teeth, burning of evildoers, lake of fire, throw everybody in, which was not a huge inspiration to enter into the community of love, is it? That's not what you put on a party invitation to the greatest celebration of love and grace of all time. Yeah, okay, so y'all are with me. You're not necessarily signing up for the express train to this party. Okay. I'm just making sure I'm not alone in this here. So, where does a passage like this fit into an understanding of a God who comes in to a culture very much based on right and wrong, on law as opposed to gospel and prophecy, and literally throws it all out, like says, hey, you know this big net of fish, we're throwing it all out. I'm making a new promise, a new covenant, in which there is not male or female, in which there's not Jew or Greek, in which there's not slave or free. How do we understand this in a way that the Jesus that we read over and over and over again, saying that love is the whole of the law, would talk about that those who do wrong are going to be burning with the fire, right? Well, our philosopher, our mystic this week is very different from some of the previous folks that we have gotten to meet. Simone Weil is a more modern mystic, right? And was very involved in war efforts, was very involved with actually some underground spying. She was quite an exciting woman, and was very much involved during the European wars of the 1900s. And as a Jewish person in France, was very much at the center of some of the most contested, most challenging political climate of the time. And quite frankly, a time when those who were deemed wrongdoers by the system of that time did experience death by fire. Simone also wrestled with where is God in a world that such suffering can exist. And perhaps like me, you've asked that same question. There are so many beautiful, wonderful people that are sick or are hurt or are taken advantage of. There are wars, there is famine, there is so much that happens. How would a God that is all about love and healing allow such things to take place in our world? It's, quite frankly, one of the biggest questions in following God, in being a believer. I struggle with wondering what God was doing with mosquitoes. But in a world where such suffering exists, why would God create, actively work to make these things possible. So as Simone wrestled with this, she said, well, if God is everything, if God is everywhere, if God is the fullness of all, right? God is across time, is across space, is all energy, all matter, all things are within God. There's not actually any place that God isn't. So to create all these other things, people, plants, trees, what if it's not God making them? What if God was already there, and then God takes a step back and actually takes themselves out of the space to allow the absence to be felt? Now that I know it takes some wrestling with, so we're gonna spend some time in that for a second. Because so many of our stories are about God making the things, right? Sculpting the things out of the soil and making the trees and creating the animals and creating these moments of healing. And yet, when we move from the Old Testament to the New, it is much more of the casting out rather than the creating. Have you ever noticed that? That evil that has come and filled spaces, that people who have come in and taken over and occupied lands, when God shows up, those things that are not of God, that are not for the good of God's people, that aren't that fullness, that love that is God, God comes and fills that space. And everything that is not of God is pushed away. And so Simone invites us to contemplate, what does it mean to recognize God present everywhere? That the very air we breathe is the stunning nature of God. That this open sky, that the beauty of our planet when it works in perfection, clouds becoming rain, becoming waves of ocean, becoming cradle for born fish and baby dolphins, becoming that which feeds our bodies, nourishes and waters our plants, the interconnection of all things, that is just a tiny hint of how full God is. And that when we are present in the fullness of God, there's simply not room for anything else. When we were at St. John's this past week, we were talking about temptation, which is another topic that I'm not a huge fan of. I'm a big fan of, if it feels good, there may be a reason for it to feel good. But the story of Jesus in the desert for those 40 days of Lent that we're in the midst of right now is really defined by the story of the devil coming and tempting Jesus, saying, I'll give you all the things you don't have. I'll fill all the empty spaces within you. The parts of you that are afraid of being forgotten, I'll make you famous. The parts of you that are afraid of being weak, I'll make you powerful. The parts of you that are afraid of lacking, I'll make you rich and wealthy. What does Jesus do, though? Jesus says, I lack nothing. I am full. I am complete. There are no holes in my spirit that I need to fill with something that takes from someone else manipulates someone else, hurt or harms someone else. And so in the story of Jesus in the desert, we can think about sin not as doing the things that are wrong, breaking the rules. We recognize that sin is what happens when we act out, trying to fill the places in us that are empty. That unhealed hurt, the unaddressed trauma, the wounds, the fears, the anxieties, those insecurities that we haven't taken the time to heal, to allow God to fill in. Those are the places where we tend to act out in ways that harm either ourselves or other people. You ever heard the expression, hurt people hurt people? That's real. And so where is the devil in this? Anything that tells you you are not whole, you are not perfectly, wonderfully made, you don't have everything that you need to be deserving of blessing, love, companionship, peace. That's the evil in our world and in our life. And so this story becomes a dramatic metaphor of casting out anything that tells us we are not enough, that we are empty, that we are broken, that we are unhealed. That devil that sows those seeds in us, those seeds of doubt, those seeds of fear, those seeds of criticism, those seeds of shame, those are weeds in the garden of your spirit. And they are not the voice of God. And so it'd be great if we could just flick those out, right? But now maybe y'all are, you're a wise and brilliant crew here, right? So maybe you do better at this than me. I have tried to just, I listen to my Snoop Dogg affirmation CD. It's fabulous. It's a real thing, not a joke. I'm telling you, check it out, available on YouTube, right? And Snoop Dogg tells me I can do anything. Do you think that I believe it just because I heard it? Have any of you ever wrestled with feeling not good enough? With feeling that sense of shame, embarrassment, insecurity, wondering if maybe you should have made different choices? One of the worst words in the world, potential. You ever feel like you didn't live up to your potential? Is it easy to cast those thoughts out? If you tell yourself once, okay, that's not of God. I'm perfectly and wonderfully made. I'm good now. Are you restored to perfect health, confidence, and a sense of wholeness? No. You neither, huh? We got any gardeners in the house? Yeah. You flick that weed, does it just go away? No. It'll come back. Sometimes you gotta pull it up. I get these weed things that they're like this. It's me and arm wrestling. Like, you're coming out, baby, you're coming out. Right? It takes time, and that's okay. But this passage, what does it mean to revisit it? And it is clearly a parable. This is a metaphor. This is not a literal, there is a lake of fire and a devil coming for you. So can we just agree on that right now together? This is a parable. That means it is a story to help us understand something. When Jesus was not talking in parables and stories, Jesus was saying very clearly, love is the whole of the law. And so that which is not of love, it needs to be rooted out. And we have to keep working at it. Just like the sin of racism, that because we say racism is bad, it's not gone. We say homophobia is bad, it's not gone. We say that the prison industrial complex is bad, and guess what? Also not gone. We say insecurity is bad. We tell our friends and our families how beloved they are, how perfect they are, and that insecurity and that fear, we still wrestle with it from when we were children, and that's okay. But this passage reminds us not to stop fighting, that God will send angels, will continue to come with you, to be with you, to support you, and that the ministry of Jesus pushes out those things that have no space in your life or your spirit. And when it comes to God's beloveds, let me tell you, Jesus does not play. Jesus will fight for you, will not leave you, and will not play games with how precious you are to him. You are not doing this work alone, and you are not doing it with such a nice person that they're going to let you suffer and say, but that really wasn't a good choice. The Jesus who fights for you flips tables in temples and was willing to die on a cross fighting the state rather than cave in to police. You have not just a friend, but a warrior that is beside you. And so I'm going to ask you, with love, to revisit those places and those messages that you might have heard as a young person, that you interpreted or that someone told you were about deserving shame and needing to be afraid that you were the one getting thrown into the lake of fire if you didn't follow the rules and check the boxes. And I need you to remember that it is the fear and it is the doubt, it is the things that are not of God, which means the things that are not of love, because God is love. Are you with me, church, or no? So if God is love and Jesus is here to cast out any and everything that is not of God, and that's the thing that is going pushed out and cast away until nothing is left but the presence and fullness of God and God's beautiful creation, my friends, I'm going to ask you to get old school church with me. And I'm going to need you to say, spirit of insecurity, I cast you out. Spirit of doubt, I cast you out. Spirit of fear, I cast you out. Spirit of not good enough, I cast you out. Spirit of not worthy of love, I cast you out. Jesus, I invite you in. Love, I invite you in. Peace, I invite you in. Wholeness, I invite you in. Good job. Now what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to keep doing that. the same way that my gardeners stay on top of their garden, I'm gonna need y'all to stay on top of your soul. Can you do that for me? When you catch those moments that fear, that doubt, that insecurity, that sense that you are not worthy of God's love, when it creeps in, remember that that is a weed in the garden of your beautiful soul, and that it is not of God, and that God comes to remove, our Jesus comes to remove that which is not of God, and God is love. So I'm going to give us a moment to meditate on that shortly. But there is one other thing that Simone Weil preached about and wrote about that I would like you to remember. That Simone was also an activist, as I mentioned, a spy and a fabulous underground covert writer and creator. But wealthy, came from a very educated background, and realized that it's very hard doing activism for people when you're not with people, when you're not of those people. And so Simone chucked her money out the window and went and lived in the communities of factory workers, lived in the communities of people who were doing the work and experiencing the lifestyle that were in struggle. The people that she was activating for, she went and activated with. She went and advocated and spoke up and talked about the importance of child labor laws, the importance of working in safe factory environments, did that with individuals. That's a big part of why we do the work we do together. I'm not here to do this for you. Consistory President Susan Newcomer is not here to do this for you. Minister of Technology Carl is not here to do this for you. We're here to do this with you because we need the same help from God, right? And so we're going to return to this idea of community because it takes a lot of people to keep a large garden clear. But for a moment, I'd like you to just repeat some of those messages. Invite God into your soul to push out that which has no reason to be there, anything that is not love. And receive that love in for a moment. Family, I want to invite you to meet one of my dear friends, someone that I consider family, and someone who is our comrade in doing the good work. I would like you to meet Anu Banks, founder and CEO of The Movement. Now, if you haven't heard about, we have big deals coming through Heidelberg, y'all. Now, the reason why we wanted to pair The Movement with Simone Weil's work is because there's a lot of organizations in this city, aren't there? We've worked with most of them. And there's a lot of saviors in this city. There's a lot of folks that are like, I'm gonna do things for folks. But The Movement started off originally as folks part of this community who said, you know what? We're part of this community and we want to work with our community. We want to care for our community. And it began as a simple podcast that was like, let's share the good news, the uplifting stories, and the opportunity for help and support in our community. Let's share the knowledge we have instead of hoarding it or using it to deliberately withhold from each other so we can try to get more. They foundationally believe there is enough, and that when we care for each other, we grow together, we rise together. And so the movement went from podcast to Facebook group and resource sharing with thousands, literally thousands of Yorkers from across the county reaching out into other counties, sharing resources, saying, hey, I've got whole truckfuls of food coming from this organization. Can we redistribute it and get it to people who are in need? Everything from diapers to clothes to baby supplies, and a huge food pantry that has taken off and become one of the most utilized food pantries in this city. The movement is entirely volunteer run. Got their nonprofit, wrote their own grants, all done by members. It is unlike any organization that I have encountered doing advocacy or activism in York. And it started with a few friends. Because if you've never heard that a small group of people not only can change the world, but is in fact the only thing that can change the world. You're about to learn more about it today. So folks, can we give a warm welcome to Anu Banks to learn a little bit more about the movement?
Good morning, everyone. I'm usually not good at standing in front of folks, but as she said, my main mission for the movement was the stories of folks that you meet every day. And I used to see them and you're like, well, what's your story? Well, how did you end up in this situation? And most times it was just one guy I met, it was a simple divorce that made him homeless. He couldn't afford the alimony. Another man, it was like child support. He had to pay child support. So it's like a lot of times these folks that are in these situations, it's not something they choose. It's just something that happened. So telling these stories brought more people wanting to tell their stories and more people wanting to figure out, well, how can I get in touch with that person because I can help them? So we made the connections. So that's how our networking started happening, is connecting people to these people. And then when we started speaking on the porch steps, we used to do Facebook Lives. So when we started doing those, leadership started reaching out to us like, well, who are these folks? We know these resources over here. This is my job. Take my card and I can help. So folks started turning that into, well, the leadership is failing us. So now leadership is like, okay, well, we got to get our act together. And the movement became a voice for the voiceless. So people knew coming to this group or coming to one of us in the group, they could be heard. And they were no longer just somebody that was just invisible to the community. And that made people feel empowered to start telling their story, to start telling their struggles, and to start seeking out. Some used to say, oh, well, I don't want to take. You hear this a lot. I don't want to take because I know someone else needs when they come to our pantry. I always tell them, take whatever you can carry because there's plenty of it still coming. Now, with Midwest Food Bank, they've been such a blessing to us. I think being involved with church organizations has helped us get to where we are now, because Midwest Food Bank, it was a guy out in Chicago, not Chicago, but he's out in Illinois. He started it from his barn, and his church basically grew this organization to where they're in 11 states and 3 different countries, but they're a church-based food bank. So they do a lot of relief efforts, and anytime that we have extra need, I call up there and say, okay, can you get us, like next week we're getting a whole shipment of drinks to help out with different organizations. No problem, they send it. So it's It's more of empowering people because the people ask for it. We all can have great ideas, but listening to the people takes you so much further because they're going to tell you the exact problem. And we don't have to wait 50 years later like we are with the charrette that happened in York. Affordable housing care advocates happened because of charrette. Now, 50 years later, we're still talking about housing and issues like that. So the movement is basically, we need to get stuff done now. We can't keep waiting. So I think that's what the growth is of the movement. I mean, I see James over there, great guy. Love working with them. When we had the chance, we did the diaper run with them. Our diapers, when we did that with them, with Carol Hill Evans' office, our diapers were going in a week, and we had a lot of diapers. It's partnerships like that need to happen more for that type of leadership. And that will give, I read this article from my board president, and it was mainly about poverty. And one thing that keeps people in poverty is because they have no choice. The people that are in leadership or the people that pull the strings, if you only have this option, that's all you can accept. So if we're in this city in the option of having landlords that aren't being held accountable, what can you do? You just accept the terms they give you. So we need to start putting more options to marginalized people and poor people. Then that brings them out of their situations. So that's like the core thing I try to do with the movement.
Good.
Thank you.
Nope, you don't get to go anywhere. So most of you know that we have an amazing partnership of people working together to bring accessible art to our community. That we have a partnership with King's Courtyard Artist Collective, and amazing work from our sister Susie Bowser, who handles that beautiful gallery space and makes sure, working with her daughter Heather and other members of King's Courtyard, that we have these beautiful art exhibits. And so for Black History Month, to uplift Black artists in York who, because of coming from marginalized communities, not necessarily having the same opportunities as some other artists who are able to go to a larger city or to a professional art school. These were all untrained local artists. And they donated a lot of additional art, and so did some of the other allies that were part of the gallery. When they found out we were having an art show of local untrained Black artists to give them that exposure and the chance to sell their art, these other artists who had a little bit more privilege, they donated their pieces and said, well, if you sell those, you can keep that money to use it for something that supports Black History Month and the support of uplifting Black people in New York City. And then we had so much donated art, we had some left over. And so Susie created this amazing live auction. Do y'all remember that, when y'all came back after church and you purchased all those wonderful pieces of art? Well, all of that money was able to be totaled up and brought together from Heidelberg members, and it is ready now as a gift from Heidelberg to be presented to the work of the movement. So Susie, would you come up, tell us how much we raised, and make the official presentation to President Anu?
Well, it was your friends too. The Black Poets Night was here. We got some money from that for their admission, and that was all done free, and we got the admission money. We got artists donated all their work. It was like, I think about $1,500 worth of art or more that was donated. We got things from the venue, which is the shop at Royal Square. We got gift certificates from Hive. And my daughter is such a sweet soul. She just came up with this idea called Carla, and she said, Mom, can you do this? She has a mental illness, so she can set things up, but she can't actually do the hands-on. So that's why I stepped in and said, well, sure, we can do this. And so we raised $550. There you go. It's in the form of a couple different checks, but
And it's thanks to the congregation here that really stepped up, and I thank you very much.
Woo! I love it. So, friends and family, we together were able to raise $550 to give to the movement, which I know is only a fraction of the need, but I promise you, to the people that that feeds for the next month, the people who that provides diapers for, that act of kindness, of knowing that there's a church community that cares, that seed of hope that plants can do a lot to push out those seeds of thinking that you're alone in this. So, go team. And so, friends, speaking of which, we now have the chance to continue our giving. And so we'll go from the front to the back. And if you are willing to or have brought with you offerings for our great day of giving, you can place those in the bowl. But there are also stones in these bowls next to the offertory plates. A reminder that when we give, we receive something back that is permanent, that is with us wherever we go. And that is the reminder that we are part of community. So whether you have a hand that is full or empty, if you have something to put in the plate or don't, I invite you to still come forward. Offer your prayers over the plate with an extended hand and offer to share your prayers with the community. But take that stone with you as a reminder that wherever you go this week, God goes as well. And if it is familiar to you, I invite you to sing along with us before we pray, just centering our hearts in a sense of prayer, grateful for the word and the ministry that we've been able to witness today, as we continue to pray for the world, for each other, and for ourselves. Oh Lord, hear our prayer. Human beings are so made that the ones who do the crushing feel nothing. It is the person crushed who feels what is happening. Unless one has placed oneself on the side of the oppressed to feel with them, one cannot understand. The love of our neighbor in all its fullness simply means being able to say, "What are you going through?" So as prayer, please turn to your neighbor and ask them the question, "What are you going through?" And listen to what they say. I'll tell you, Miss Dodd. As you return to your seat, thank you for prayerfully building community and opening yourselves up today, even for a moment. I see some smiles. I like it. So I invite you to join with me in the Lord's Prayer. This is the James Burklow translation, but use whatever one is free in your heart, whatever translation you prefer. Dear one, closer to us than our own hearts, farther from us than the most distant star, you are beyond naming. May your powerful presence become obvious not only in the undeniable glory of the sky, but also in the seemingly base and common processes of the earth. Give us what we need day by day to keep body and soul together, because clever as you have made us, we still owe our existence to you. We recognize that to be reconciled with you, we must live peaceably and justly with other human beings, putting hate and bitterness behind us. We are torn between our faith in your goodness and our awareness of the brokenness in your creation. So deliver us from the temptation to despair. Yours alone is the universe and all its majesty and beauty. So it is. Amen.
Good morning, or should I say afternoon? I received a copy of this selection on Thursday, and since then I've been reading through it, stumbling and fumbling my way through like a third-rate football player. But I will try to do justice to the invitation by Oriah Mountain Dreamer. It doesn't interest me what you do for a living. I want to know what you ache for, and if you dare to dream of meeting your heart's longing. It doesn't interest me how old you are. I want to know if you will risk looking like a fool for love, for your dream, for the adventure of being alive. It doesn't interest me what planets are squaring your moon. I want to know if you have touched the center of your own sorrow, if you have been opened by life's betrayals, or have become shriveled and closed from fear of further pain. I want to know if you can sit with pain, mine or your own, without moving to hide it or fade it or fix it. I want to know if you can be with joy, mine or your own. If you can dance with wildness and let the ecstasy fill you to the tips of your fingers and toes without cautioning us to be careful, be realistic, to remember the limitations of being human. It doesn't interest me if the story you are telling me is true. I want to know if you can disappoint another to be true to yourself. If you can bear the accusation of betrayal and not betray your own soul. I want to know if you can be faithless and therefore be trustworthy. I want to know if you can see beauty even when it is not pretty every day, and if you can source your own life from its presence. I want to know if you can live with failure, yours and mine, and still stand at the edge, on the edge of a lake and shout to the silver of the full moon, yes! It doesn't interest me to know where you live or how much money you have. I want to know if you can get up after the night of grief and despair, weary and bruised to the bone, and do what needs to be done for the children. It doesn't interest me who you are, how you came to be here. I want to know if you will stand in the center of the fire with me and not shrink back. It doesn't interest me where or what or with whom you have studied. I want to know what sustains you from the inside when all else falls away. I want to know if you can be alone with yourself and if you truly like the company you keep in the empty moments.
My friends, as a response to that beautiful poem, I invite you to stand up and stretch it out and move. You don't have to, just if it feels good to your body, but stretch and move and let this sense of blessing and community just flow through you as we sing this "Bless the Lord" 3 times. And then I will offer you a blessing to keep and take with you as you go forward into your week. Bless the Lord, my soul. May divine love bless us in our rest for nourishment, in our dreams for vision, in our waking with a calm and focused mind, in our soul with sacred readings of spirit.
Let's send one another out with the peace. In American Sign Language, peace be with you. And God's people say, amen.
Amen.